probably later this year or 2022, that will be the end. And then we're going to have a horrible bear market. Because, for the reasons I said, I mean, I'm not some doom and gloomer. I'm just telling you that the debt is much, much higher now than it was in 2008. And the next bear market has to be very, very bad. But in the meantime, there's gigantic amounts of money floating around. It's going into markets. It's going into the real economy as well. It's artificial. If you see some of the things that, the shipping business is just unbelievably hot right now because there's so much money floating around. As you know, nearly every government, every central bank in the world has been printing huge amounts of money and borrowing and spending huge amounts of money. It's never happened like this in the history of the world. Never in recorded history have we seen so much excess. I'll call it excess. They think it's normal. They think it's fine. And this has caused many markets to go up a lot. If you want to build a bridge, it takes a long time. But if you want to invest and you have a lot of money floating around, you just go on the internet and in 5 seconds you can invest in anything you want to. And that's what's been happening, and that's what's continuing to happen. All bonds, in fact, I cannot think of any bonds that are not in a bubble. The treasury bonds in the US are the lowest they've been in history. In Japan, there are negative interest rates. Parts of Europe, there are negative interest rates. Even in China, China still has interest rates, but they're the lowest they've ever been. So, it's pretty simple to me. When things are the lowest they've ever been in the history of the world, that's usually a bubble. Now, you can, in even junk bonds, the spreads between high quality and low quality is the lowest ever. People are desperate to buy yield, and they're paying any price for them. Now, there's some bonds that are better priced. Russian government bonds in rubles still have yield, but they're very expensive on a historic basis. Katrina, as I look around the world, most asset stocks in many parts of the world are either at all-time highs or very, very strong. In Japan, they're at the highest they've been in 31 years. So stocks are going up. Bonds are certainly in a bubble. Bonds have never been this high in the history of the world. Property in many places is very strong. Seoul, London, many places. So that's a bubble. But commodity, sugar's down 75% from its all-time high. Silver's down 40%, 45%. These things are not overpriced and certainly possibly very cheap. Well, I have been buying the ETF. There's an ETF on the New York Stock Exchange, a commodity and an agricultural ETF, RJA. I continue to buy it. It's been down recently, and it is, as I look at the world, agricultural commodities are among the cheapest asset in the world. So I've been buying more of the Rogers Agricultural ETF. I don't know of any other asset class that is as cheap as commodities, especially agricultural commodities, anywhere in the world. I'm not buying either at the moment, but again, I'm not a good trader, but I am waiting for silver and gold to correct even more. If I were buying today, I would buy more silver than gold. Silver is down 50% from its all-time high. Gold is down 10% from its all-time high. I'm not buying either at the moment, but when I buy again, I will probably buy a lot more silver than gold. And I will watch ET to figure out when to buy. It does seem clear to the world that we're going to have electric vehicles in the future, but this takes a long time. If you remember Henry Ford's wife had an electric vehicle. She did not like internal combustion engines. She insisted that electric vehicles were the future. Well, she was over 100 years too soon. Yes, they're coming, but it's not going to happen overnight. And in the meantime, reserves of oil continue to go down. I'm not urging you to rush out and become an oil trader by any stretch, but I would not give up on I am not giving up on the price of oil yet. And electric vehicles are coming. I can see that. I can watch ET as well as you can. But it takes a while, as Henry Ford's wife found out. There are many alternate sources of energy coming: solar, especially solar, wind, ocean power. Many kinds of alternatives are coming, but it's going to take a long time. So, and as I said, oil is down 50% from its all-time high, and known reserves everywhere in the world, including Saudi Arabia, continue to decline. The fracking bubble has popped. Fracking's still here, but for a while there, if you could spell fracking, they gave you money so you could go into the fracking business. Well, that's not happening anymore. And in the meantime, reserves go down. It would not surprise me at all to see oil much higher over the next 2 or 3 years because of supply and demand. Remember, there are two sides to this equation. These things always start, in the marginal markets where people aren't looking. You're starting to see the Chinese stocks go down. You're starting to see problems in some banks in some small countries. You're starting to see problems. That's the way it usually works. Eventually, everybody knows. And in 2008, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt finally, and then everybody knew there was a problem. But that had been building for several months with many markets around the world. We're starting to see problems. I mentioned China. We're starting to see problems in some markets. I'm not selling out yet of equities, not by any stretch of the imagination, because there's still many stocks around the world that haven't gone into a bubble yet. I expect everything to go into a bubble eventually. But when that happens, probably later this year or 2022, that will be the end. And then we're going to have a horrible bear market. Because for the reasons I said, I'm not some doom and gloomer. I'm just telling you that the debt is much, much higher now than it was in 2008. And the next bear market has to be very, very bad. But in the meantime, there's gigantic amounts of money floating around. It's going into markets. It's going into the real economy as well. It's artificial. If you see some of the things that, the shipping business is just unbelievably hot right now because there's so much money floating around. The bad news is these things always end, and the better they get, the worse they get when they end. And as I said, we've never seen anything like this in recorded history, so be worried. I'm not short. I haven't sold short anything, but I am certainly worried. Nearly every government, every central bank in the world has been printing huge amounts of money. You just go on the internet, and in 5 seconds you can invest in anything you want to. When things are the lowest they've ever been in the history of the world, that's usually a bubble. Probably later this year or 2022, that will be the end. And then we're going to have a horrible bear market.